Alabama hosting Texas. Crimson Tide 24, Texas Longhorns 34. What you make of this game, man?
Wow, man. I mean, I was beyond impressed by Texas with the way and subsequently not very impressed at all about Alabama. Let me just start with this. When Kevin Steele came down there, my thought was not all these people making jokes about, oh my gosh, they're falling back to Kevin Steele. They can't get anyone else, yada, yada, yada. My thought was him and Saban have the same mindset. They speak the same lingo. This is a good move, probably. I mean, sure, you could get a young guy that might be somewhat more energetic, yada, yada, yada. They've had him. But I was like, he's got the same mindset. They speak the same lingo. They want to do the same things. This should be a good thing because we know they've still got personnel. Yeah, they lose games now more than they used to, but they've got the personnel, yada. It's going to be great. Texas kind of made it look like Tennessee with the way those deep bombs were going. Of course, they didn't. The game wasn't that high scoring. Part of that's Alabama and losing a guy like Bryce Young. But the deep balls from Ewers, one of them being just a flat-footed, just him yeeting it, crescent moon via the 2022 Tennessee offense, if you will. And those receivers are legit. Quinn Ewers is legit. To me, he's probably my Heisman frontrunner. I know Travis Hunter's doing a lot of things, and we'll talk about those later on, sure. But
yeah,
I think Ewers is probably set for New York City if he builds on that performance the way that their schedule could allow him to.
Absolutely. Focusing on Texas, as of right now, I have them in the playoffs. They were so good come Saturday night. Quinn Ewers, and again, just looking at this from a paper perspective, Quinn Ewers, who looks slender, by the way, looks like he lost a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was paying attention mostly to Tennessee Austin Peay, but he looks slender. Looks like an athlete out there. I thought post game he was actually rather humble. I was expecting a little bit of a different personality. Could have been because of the mullet or then like of the mullet. But Texas is legit. The receiver room is probably one of the best in the nation. A.D. Mitchell had a really good night. Obviously, Xavier Worthy had a really good night. Then you got Jordan Whittington. You've got their tight end, whose name is Jatavion Sanders, who led them in receiving yards, 114. I mean, Texas in this moment, it's going to get arguably easier. We can at least say favorable for them here on out. Their schedule is incredibly favorable. Percentage-wise, 0 to 100, chance of getting to the playoffs? What do you think?
Oh, man. I mean, gosh, I'm tempted. My first thought was 95. I'm going to come down to, 80, 85. But, I mean, they're set. Yeah. They're set up. Now they can afford a loss where a team like Alabama can't. A team like LSU can't afford another loss. Let's just play the game of elimination. And those are two major players in the SEC West that have to run the table, including winning the SEC championship probably, to get to the 14 playoff. So you've done massive elimination things via FSU, LSU, Texas beating Bama, their schedule being fairly favorable. I mean, we talked about in the offseason they're going to have a Texas-sized target on their backs with them leaving the Big 12 and the bitterness and the pettiness there. But when we said those things, that's not counting on Baylor looking bad. Sure, they have to go there and win that game, but they look terrible right now.
Right.
You've got Kansas and Oklahoma shortly after that, and then it gets much lighter until Kansas State travels to Texas, who hosts that game. I mean, their chances are great right now. Here's the thing that I said to you during the game. I said if they don't win this game against this Alabama team, and I think they had the lead at the time, but Bama was threatening. I don't think they'll ever be air quotes back because that's always the conversation. Are they back? Yeah, they're back.
Yes.
No, they're not back. Well, this is as close as they look to back of doing the things that Texas should be doing. And again, the schedule gets so much more favorable when you talk about knocking down who was Goliath, who has been Goliath, and then having a week or two to get ready for Oklahoma. Maybe don't get tripped up by Kansas. Get through Kansas State. You can probably afford a loss if you're on the rest of the table. They've got a great chance.
Absolutely. Let's look at this for the distant future. What does this win mean in Tuscaloosa for the narrative as they go into the SEC? What do you think?
I didn't think that – I certainly think they're more ready than Oklahoma as of September 2023. I think they're more ready than Oklahoma because of the steps that Sark has taken roster-wise. Now they've done it on the field, which was really the last major question in my mind for them coming in. But I think this is a great sign for them. I mean, their defensive line was so fierce Saturday night. It was arguably dominant. I mean, they lived in the backfield. They made Milroe have to use his legs probably more than he even wanted to, unless it was a design play. I think they're ready, man. I mean, their offensive line held up quite nice. Bama, sure, they got near you or some, but they didn't just terrorize them like they used to do to everyone. Their receivers were fantastic against SEC cornerbacks and safeties. I mean, and their running game was enough. That's kind of the way that the game is now. You're really one or the other. It's so hard to find balance. And their running game was enough. They're recruiting at an excellent level. It's only going to stay up there if it doesn't increase some more. I mean, you could see them certainly living in the top 3 every year if they're winning. They've done it at times when they're not winning at that high level. I think they're ready. Whereas I probably wouldn't have said that. I'd have had major questions about them coming into Saturday, and especially if they lost that game.
I'm in 100% agreement with you, man. If you're a Texas fan, you got to be excited coming off of that win in Tuscaloosa about the future of you being a Southeastern Conference member. Because if you lose that game, the narrative on you out there is, well, they just can't do it. And they're going to only join a bigger conference where the weekly games look like this. So, and if they were going to do it, this was the year to do it, right? And I think
100%.
And I think it saddles well with everything that you just said about them being back and then their future into the conference. But now let's shift gears to Bama a little bit. I have a couple of questions that I want to throw at you as we talk about Bama. We said over and over again, we did, the media did, everybody did, Alabama fans did. If you take Bryce Young off that 2022 Alabama football team, they're an 8-4 squad. Are we getting a look at what this Alabama team would have looked like last year without Bryce Young? Are we, I mean, is this, what I'm getting at is this an 8-4 football team in Tuscaloosa?
I never thought I'd see that day. And even saying those things last year, it's almost like you've got a wink going on and you don't actually mean it because of the level of trust that we've had in Saban. But, I mean, it very well could be. Texas A&M was putrid last year in their record and the way that they played oftentimes. Well, Alabama's got to go to College Station, and their offense at least looks like it's ramped up a step. Before that, they're going to host Ole Miss, and you know that Lane is already dying on the inside, that he wasn't a Saban assistant to beat him before now that Kirby's done it, now that Jimbo's done it, now that Sark's done it. You know he has that circled. They've got LSU, who, I mean, I don't think LSU's going to stink, and I definitely think they're going to force Alabama to score points more than just stifle LSU, that type of game where we used to see that. And then you've got Tennessee, who didn't look great, early in week 1, especially not in week 2. They don't look like 2022 Tennessee yet, but they can certainly give them problems. If those deep balls are there, if Tennessee schemes those up the way that Texas did, the way that Tennessee did last year, there are losses on this schedule if they don't figure something out very quickly. I know that a lot of these recaps, we have talked about the urgency that teams have to have in fixing some of their problems.
Yes.
Texas has it, to me, on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alabama has it on both sides of the ball. Excuse me.
I was just as confused. I was like, wait a second. I agree, but for some reason it doesn't sound right.
Alabama has it on both sides of the ball. Or otherwise, I think they could be a 4-loss team.
Yeah. I think a lot of this, their total outcome is going to come around quarterback play, which I want to talk about specifically in Saturday's game. Jalen Milroe had, let me look at this again. He was 14 for 27, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Let's just talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
His first pick that he throws it basically in the flats, left side, and there is a corner sitting underneath it. And he, as soon as the snap is taken, he is staring that down. And I do not know how he does not see that corner sitting. The corner is basically sitting on his heels as well. Basically, like if you throw this to the flats, you're an idiot. Oh my God, you just threw it to the flats, you're an idiot. Yeah. Of course that's him picked. Has another one. I think there are actually only 2 I don't want to say eligible receivers, but only 2 receivers, pass catchers who ran routes, but he stares to the right side, throws it anyway, and of course it's picked. Now, then you have his 2 touchdowns. His first touchdown should have been a pick. I mean, it's all but dropped like NCAA 14 and bounces, perfectly for Jermaine Burton to make an athletic catch. So if that's picked off, you're looking at, and the narrative is totally different. I mean, the hot seat is out on Jalen Milroe because you're talking about 1 touchdown and 3 picks, and the cutting into that yardage probably just over 200. But if you're a Bama fan, which we know you're not, we know, Are you cool with Jalen Milroe going forward, or what? I mean,
I'm not. I'm not based on how that game unfolded, and really, to me, just from my memory of those plays, those picks, being very similar. I mean, the main element being that he stares a guy down. There's an underneath DB on both occasions, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, sure, he's got his legs. They've been electric. They have made disasters into touchdowns against MTSU and Texas. You brought Tyler Buckner in. Why'd you do that? Can he stand in that pocket and deliver a better pass and keep it away from the defense? Can Ty Simpson, who we know who he played against in high school, it wasn't the sharpest level of competition, but he looks like he's got the tools. Can he do it? I don't think Ty Simpson is going to be the one, but they've got USF coming up at USF. Play them all. You better play all 3. You don't have many more opportunities where you're going to be able to do things like that without it being real live SEC action. So I think you do it Saturday, because I'm ready to see those guys if I'm an Alabama fan.
What world are we living in? I had no idea that the Tide was playing at South Florida.
Hey, I'll tell you this, man. The smaller schools are getting a little bit more diligent or brave is probably the better word. They're getting a little bit more brave. If you'll throw in this amount of money, make it a home and home or whatever, or come down here, whatever, same deal. So they're getting a little bit more brave. They're getting a little more bang for their buck. And what a world it is that Alabama is traveling to USF. Yeah.
Well, you're going to color me surprised if that stadium is not sold out and full of South Florida fans, right? Because Alabama is coming to town. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say, let's see all 3 quarterbacks. Yeah, okay, yes, you're going to be better roster-wise and on paper much better than South Florida, but that I'm not calling for an upset. But could be a little more uncomfortable as an Alabama than you would like. Anyway, all right. So we heard all offseason that Bama is changing the DNA, right? They want to get back to the ground and pound. They want to shove it down your throat. Well, they had 35 attempts come Saturday for 107 yards. It's a 3.1 yard average. Jace McClellan was your leader by a yard, 12 attempts, 45 yards. Second up was Jalen Milroe, 15 carries, 44 yards. And I just want to point out that Jace McClellan had a 15-yard rush, and if he doesn't get that, you're looking at 11 for 30, which is even worse. So
yeah,
if that is your DNA and those are your rushing numbers, I've talked about this in the past, that is not good enough, especially if you're going to have your starting quarterback be that inconsistent. Now, can he improve going forward? Yeah. Of course he can. But so in 2 games now for Bama, Texas and MTSU, we've gotten a special little feature by the broadcasters on the size of Alabama's offensive line. They're bigger than any other NFL offensive line. Okay, can we stop talking about that now? Because the numbers don't reflect the fat scale.
Yeah.
the size of the hogs up front. I mean, it's not a direct correlation. So Alabama's going to have to fix that fast.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the stats versus MTSU, McClellan was still in the 3.x range when he carried the ball. Now, he only got 10 attempts. They spread it around. They had a youngster go for 7.3. Roy Dell went for 5.1. you're not going to see those guys, though, if the game is, against Texas or if it's against Ole Miss and that game's close. You're going to see Jace McClellan, then Roydell Williams as his backup. And again, we heard so much about murder ball. That was the term because that's what they used to play. That's what we used to see.
Yeah.
And it's not happening on the field. I have this kind of similar feeling that I had about Florida when they lost at Utah. They didn't start that game down 24-3 or 24-11 even. They could have given the ball off earlier and more often, and they didn't. So
they didn't.
And again, in Florida kills McNeese State, and all we hear about is their rushing attack. Well, you didn't give it off when it mattered. You let the game get out of hand before you had a choice.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd say the same about Alabama because that was a close game for a long time. It only ended up a 10-point loss. I mean, I just don't understand, though. If you want to talk about murder ball, and I understand that a lot of that is talking heads, sort of like ourselves, but some of that's probably coming from guys that have sources in the program. That's what they want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
that's not
absolutely.
what we're seeing.
Absolutely. I'm gonna tie something together here, and then we're gonna end this conversation on Texas and Bama. So again, this is supposed to be the DNA of Alabama going forward, murder ball, all the things that you just said. Now, I'm gonna go to Clemson, then I'm gonna come back to Bama. I'm gonna just use Clemson as an example. Clemson struggle bussing, right? Clemson's greatest teams: elite quarterback play, right? Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, elite receiver play.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty similar for Bama. Okay. So your Tua's, Jalen Hurts was really good. And then you had, Mac Jones, who was extremely serviceable in that 2020 season, obviously had elite receiver play, but Steve Sarkisian was your offense coordinator then, elite quarterback play in Bryce Young. Bama in 2023 is without both.
Yeah.
They are without elite quarterback play and they are without elite receiver play. And it kind of comes back to, is this an 8-4 football team? Because if that is going to be your DNA and you can't run the ball and you're going to have to resort to throwing the ball, to who? Because don't get me wrong, Burton, serviceable, above average receiver. Kobe Prins, good receiver. Nib Black, however you say his name, good tight end. If I'm Alabama at this point, I'm not saying, that the world is falling apart, but I'm concerned.
They're not those guys. They're not the elite guys that they have. Kobe Prentice, blazing short guy. Isaiah Bond, blazing fast. Jermaine Burton hasn't quite looked right at Alabama, if you're asking me. I know he's had some stats to argue against that, but he's not quite looked right, even with Bryce Young throwing the ball. But I think there's more to it because these guys are blazing fast. They're good athletes. They look very similar to the types of guys. They don't have that tall, Jameson Williams and Jerry Jeudy, those guys are smaller guys. They're not huge, but something's off. I'm just saying something is off because the guys look very similar and they're just not getting the results last year with elite quarterback play.
Yeah. And what about this transfer, Malik Benson? He's got one catch for 5 yards, and that was in the MTSU game. Where's he at? So
he had 2 for 33 against Texas. That's not what Bama's doing with transfers. So I don't understand what that is either.
Not a clue. All right, let's end this segment by me asking you this question. And I'm probably going to take the coward way out and not answer it.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. Is this the end of the Bama dynasty? Is this the beginning of the end of the Bama dynasty?
I don't see a way back to the top for them right now. You got too many teams hogging the elite trench players. Now, Bama has that huge offensive line that we've heard about. We're not getting the results out of them that Georgia's getting out of them, that other teams are getting out of them. And now you've got way too many teams able to take away 1 or 2 players here or there. They were supposed to have the most dominant pass rush, the most lethal pass rush that they'd had last year, and they didn't. And they did nothing with it. They lost 2 games with it for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
So I don't see a path right now back to the top for them with Saban's age, the assistants that they've had hired away from them. They're not able to replace those guys somehow, which I just can't comprehend. I don't get it. I don't see a path back to the top for them over Georgia, over Texas. If they're entering this picture, is a massive problem for Alabama. I mean, and then you got resurging teams all around, like Florida State, Tennessee looking on the up. Ohio State's not going away. Michigan looks good. I don't see a path right now back to the top for them.
That's fair. That's fair. You know, what Saban has done is remarkable. One thing to get to the top, nothing to stay at the top. But at some point, it's going to come to an end. It's going to. It has to. I mean, he cannot live on forever. However, I'm going to take the cop out here and say, I don't think this is the beginning of the end of the dynasty. This is probably the closest we've ever come.
Yeah.
But I'm one of those, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Right? Get what I'm saying?
Yep. I just don't see the path back to a championship. Certainly not dynasty level multiple championships.
All right, well, let's end this segment this way then. Is this a playoff team?
No, it is not. There's too much traffic for a team with way too many issues.
Fair. Texas goes into Alabama, gets a win, 34-24 over the Tide.
Pandemonium reigns.